sit back in your seats, get something to eat, and watch this movie. Don't let the kiddies see it, because, well, we'll let you hear the beginning first. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Left of the Projector. I am your host, Evan, back again with another film discussion from the left. I'm happy to announce that you can now sign up and be a paid subscriber to the show directly from Spotify, so you can just pop on there and support the show. Also, if you would be so kind as to smash that ratings button on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever you're listening to this show right now. As always, you can follow the show on TikTok and Instagram at Left of the Projector Pod. Enjoy the show. All right, we will get into the discussion this week on the classic film Forrest Gump. And with me, I have a menagerie of comrades, starting with ComradeLarry, KobasGhost, Heyyyy, and back again for the fifth time, SmirkGently. Thank you all for joining me.
Is it really for that many times? Oh my god.
We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Lots of voices, so it'll be fun. So, I know I brought everyone in to talk about Forrest Gump. I don't know. It's been a while since it's been out, almost 30 years. Does anyone have like memories of this movie, like from when it was out or when they were younger?
I used to love this movie when I was a kid, when I didn't know any better.
Yeah,
me too. My mom was like way into this movie. Her brother, my uncle, he actually wore like braces when he was a kid. And he had cerebral palsy and he was also developmentally delayed. So like she had a very like strong like for this movie. And there's still like I like watched it again today. And there's still parts that make me tear up a little bit because it's very emotionally charged. But yeah, looking back, we'll get into it later, but it has a nostalgia value, but there's a lot that we're going to end up talking about, I think.
I mean, I think the movie in general is just like tearing at like nostalgia. Like I think for boomers, especially, given the age of Forrest Gump. So, yeah,
that's like 80% of the selling point of that movie is just like jumping back to the nostalgia throughout the whole thing. Like it hits all those like pivotal notes for that particular audience. I think that's, if it weren't for that, it would not have been anywhere near as successful as it ended up being.
How long until we get the recursive nostalgia of Forrest Gump being remade?
They are it. There's a new version of it. And it's God, I don't remember the name, so I'll look it up. But it's an Indian film. And it's coming out this year, or it already came out. And it's basically shot for shot.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I'm very excited to watch it.
I mean, they can make like a new one, except it's like maybe like a leftist should make it. It's like all the awful things that happened in all of those moments in time.
You actually acknowledge that Vietnam was not a good thing for America, maybe? That's a good start.
Yeah, they glorify that the hell out of Vietnam.
Well, we had mentioned with Evan yesterday that we cannot pass up the casual shrimp imperialism that Bubba talks about. Like as soon as they show up in Nam, Bubba is saying about how much great shrimp we have in these waters. And when we win this war and take everything over, we're going to send American shrimpers over here to shrimp these waters.
And guess what?
Like, my God, that's it.
And they did, because there is a real forest, like a Bubba Gump shrimp, and they probably have Vietnamese shrimp there.
They do. I'm sure they do.
But it's okay because they talk the same and it's cute.
So I mean, we can kind of like go through we don't have to like sketch the plot. Most people have seen this movie at some point.
Just spoilers.
Yes. Forrest Gump dies in the end. No, I'm just kidding. Well, I guess he eventually does. Well, too far. But so the movie is like, I feel like the beginning of the movie, they really are giving you like this sentimental feeling of like feeling really bad for a kid that, you know, is picked on and is, you know, has you know, disability. You know, he's not liking his school, not liking his friends, you know. So I think they I'll give it to them that they do pull on those little heartstrings, you know, early on especially, and at the end too. But I don't know. It's hard to get mad at the beginning of the movie, especially except for the fact that he's named after the KKK leader in Alabama. So
Right.
there's that.
Yeah, and his mom says it's to remind you that, you know, sometimes people do things that just don't make any sense, like naming your kid after a KKK leader.
And
Right.
having a bunch of black servants at your plantation house.
Is it a plantation house? Because I'm like, every time I've watched it, I'm like looking, I'm like, did I miss like quarters somewhere on the property? Obviously, like her granddad's granddad owned it. Like the implication is definitely
Yes,
I
yes,
know.
that was definitely having spent a lot of time in Mississippi and Alabama. That was a plantation house for sure.
But it's funny. They also don't like they kind of imply that they don't have very like they're not wealthy, but maybe they just don't like really imply anything. Like you just don't really know. I don't know. I was trying to think of it. Like, was he wealthy?
No, I don't think at all. I
No,
think
right?
if anything, there's like the whole movie is just steeped in ideology, and it's almost got like that lost cause thing going. Like clearly this was a family that once had money, but now because progress, we don't have that money anymore.
Interesting.
That and the implication of like the like coerced like essay scene with Sally Fields and the teacher, like getting him into the specialized school and whatever, that would imply that they're probably not fucking rich.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. She had to she couldn't, you know, bribe them, so she had to.
Which it was fucking gross that they like kind of illustrated that as like this really cute moment because he mocks the guy's sounds or whatever, but it's like the whole scene itself is just fucking gross. Like
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. As a kid, I don't really remember. I mean, I remember the scene, but I don't remember thinking that. But yeah, in retrospect, it's pretty.
Of course, those special schools are private, cost money.
I was thinking too about the part with Elvis in it, learning his dance moves.
Yeah.
This disabled boy. But in part of that, they're erasing that Elvis stole the moves from the black community. So in the one scene, it's racist and ableist. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point because they show him on the TV like later in the like him doing the move, and I remember actually like the mother takes him away because like that's the idea of like Elvis had been like sexualizing, you know, youth, and so yeah, they not only did they co-opt, you know, black community, they
Robert Zemeckis has a really bad habit of doing that in movies. He did it in fucking Back to the Future.
Yep.
Because like, oh, Marty McFly went back in time and gave us rock and roll.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Holy shit.
Retconning Black American history into actually it was this white guy who did it.
They do it at least. There's several times they do it in this movie. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Or whenever he's explaining where he got his name to the I don't even want to say character because she's just a black nurse sitting next to him on the bench, and he's like, "Oh, I was named after fucking Nathan Bedford Forrest," and she like doesn't even acknowledge it. It's like, get the fuck out of here! Like anybody would be like, "Okay, cool, don't ever talk to me ever again."
Well, see, that's arguably one of the most realistic things in the film is some random fucking dude just telling you his entire life story while you're sitting at a bus stop, just like trying. She's like actively reading. She has a magazine open. She's reading People, and he's like, "Hello, let me tell you my entire fucking life story."
Here's
and
some chocolates too.
Yeah,
from a stranger.
No, I'm not. No, thank you.
Yeah, but no, but he liked her shoes, so I guess that's okay, right? He's like, oh, those look like comfy shoes.
It's cute. It's cute.
So the Elvis was, I guess, the first sort of like co-opting of a historical moment. But then the second one is, I think, when he gets to college and he they have the whole thing with Wallace and the integration of the schools, which is, I found like they actually kind of portrayed that mildly reasonable ish. They didn't make Wallace look like, like he was good, but they also sort of were pro army, or pro, they called it like a military dictatorship, right, of the school, I believe. So I don't know how you guys thought about that.
All they really did was like just insert him into the scene unnecessarily.
Yeah.
I think it was more so just another means to like touch on one of those emotional notes, but while also flexing that I don't know what that film technique is called that they, I guess, like
superimpose.
Yeah, there you go. Superimposed them into that scene or whatever.
Yeah, that's true. That was like they have him like standing by the door and they're like, oh, isn't that Forrest? It's like, oh yeah. Oh.
And then he hands her the notebook or whatever. Because
Yes,
they
exactly.
couldn't go all out and make him the one that desegregated schools, You could tell they wanted to.
Well, he's named after the KKK. I don't think that would really fly too well.
No, but they spend a lot of energy throughout this film making sure to place him in proximity to Black people in a positive light,
The other thing that's interesting about this, and maybe this wasn't the same back in, the 50s, they're basically exploiting like this kid to be on the, like when he's in college, they're like exploiting him for his speed. They're like making fun of him on the sidelines, like, oh, this kid's stupid, but he's fast. And, obviously college football now is a huge business. I don't know what it was like back then, but I assume it was still profitable in some sense. But I think they're exploiting this poor kid. I mean, you kind of feel bad for him.
You can make the argument that's another example of the erasure of the Black experience in America. Forrest being this like person shoved into a school and treated badly, and like nobody really values him, but he's very athletically talented, and like they shove him into like random classes and stuff. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like it's
Shit.
like
no, that's
I missed that one.
Forrest is constantly
so fucking bad.
Forrest is constantly co-opting the Black experience and
like the worst way
journey.
possible, right? Like I don't even want to complete the thought because it makes me kind of sick, but you know what I'm saying?
And this is where you get, I think, maybe the funniest of the like, I guess, what was it called, the superimposing scene when he goes to the White House because he's an all-American and he's drinking all the Dr. Pepper, and it's like, bro, there's beer over there, I think. You don't have to drink the Dr. Pepper. And that's also felt like it's like a product deplacement type of deal too. Like, here's Dr. Pepper. It's refreshing.
Dr. Pepper, we did not kill a bunch of Colombian unionists.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Not yet. There's still time. But he drinks all the Dr. Pepper, and he's holding because he has to pee so bad. And he tells JFK he has to pee him. I mean, I kind of find that one. I don't want to use the word charming, although I did. Like, it's kind of funny, like him as a kid. I feel like I love those scenes. Like, oh, he met JFK. He met like 4 American presidents, I think.
I think it's 3 because he meets LBJ and Nixon and.
Okay, you're right, 3.
Yeah.
He doesn't meet Carter. I just watched this last night. I thought I saw Carter, but I guess I was wrong.
He shows LBJ his ass.
Yeah.
JFK, he has to pee. Nixon, he
breaks Watergate.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we will get to that as a funny thing. But then I think, which probably leads to like maybe the biggest bit of the movie, which I find, well, there's lots of problematic things about it, but maybe this is also worth talking about. So he's just graduates. He is then accosted by a army recruiter. And this is like at the beginning of the Vietnam War before the draft. And this tells me that he doesn't have money, because the army recruiters are going after people who they have degrees maybe, but they don't have a future, or they feel like they can, find poor kids and send them off to the military. So that's what happens, right? He doesn't even consider any other option, right? The next scene is him getting on another bus.
Because he asked him, he's like, oh, have you thought about your future? And he's like, shit, no, I have not at all. That's a good point. I guess I'll
he says, future?
I think the most, doesn't make sense that they would do is like they have this football star and they didn't turn that into like a propaganda tool. Like they just took like this college athlete that met the president and they're like, you get to be a foot soldier, and like weren't even like they didn't try and propagandize him more.
Yeah. Send him to the NFL. I mean, I guess that kind of ruins their whole. If he went to the NFL, then then he just gets like a concussion, and then the movie's over.
World
That's a
War
man who
II,
cannot
that would have
afford a
definitely been
concussion.
propagandized.
He
Yeah.
gets racked with CTE and then just murders a few people, and then that's that.
Yeah. But I guess you're right, though. I guess like Vietnam at the beginning, they weren't like ramping it up yet as like a big, like, oh, yay, America. I feel like they, especially at the beginning, they weren't like being like rah, rah, Vietnam.
No, it was very much a special military operation, not a war.
Yes. They like it wasn't even really considered that for a while. I don't know the exact years, but yeah, so they send him off to the military. And it's funny because he thrived in like the military idea, and I think he, was very much, he needed like that structure and order, it seemed like, and that kind of he like fit into the military industrial complex or whatever.
Yeah, Soup says he like takes to it immediately. He's one of the first things he says. The drill sergeant is like, "What's your job?" Or like, "What are you supposed to do?" He's like, "Whatever you tell me to do." He's like, "Shit, dude, you're a genius. You're amazing."
Yeah. By God, you're going to be a general.
Yeah. Right.
That's probably the only like non-propagandized point that they hit about the military in that movie, is that like he is like explicitly below average intelligence, like way below average, and he gets into the military and he's just a shit hot soldier, like blows everybody out of the water.
Yeah, that is true.
Although they kind of paint him as like a savant or something, right? Because I mean, he takes to certain tasks like.
Yeah, he puts the gun together in like the fastest of all time or whatever.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm like.
Yeah, whenever I think of the beginning of the military scene, or the army, I always think of like the where Bubba's like going on and on about his like shrimp stuff. It's like they do like masterfully in this movie of like fitting in things that are funny and cute, like layered in with just like the propaganda. So I feel like you like don't notice it as well, and that's why we're here to tell you where it is. But yeah, so he, soon after this, he's shipped off. And one thing we didn't really talk about at all throughout the whole thing, we're like focusing on, the title character. I don't know if anyone wants to say anything up until this point about like Jenny's character, because I feel like she is like, I guess the other main character in this movie, but very rarely used, like typically as kind of, I feel like she's almost like also like a plot device kind of her life.
Yeah.
Right. Like showing the what's going on in the world like through her eyes, separate from Forrest, right? I feel like, the anti-war and but also showing, because she's came from also poverty and struggles throughout the entire movie. She's like a waitress later in life.
Part of that is the propaganda, because they show Forrest doing like the college, the military, and he gets to meet that American dream kind of thing. And she also comes from almost the same background, joins the left, whatever at the time, and has a terrible time. Her life is crap.
Yeah.
She goes to college and she ends up getting kicked out because she does some sex work. She poses for some photos in her college sweater.
Right.
And somebody just happens to hand him the page that she's on. He's like, check out these tits. And it's Jenny right there. But yeah, she's super poor. She grew up in an abusive household, then gets sent to live in a trailer with her grandmother. And it's like, even when opportunities are presented to her, like she manages to get into college. So she's
a good college, it seems like, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, she's clearly capable. She does well enough in school to get in somewhere, but still the economic issues, the money stuff, what is she supposed to do? She does sex work and then she gets kicked out of school and then becomes,
Right.
like you said, the lens through which we view all the cultural things that are happening around Forrest. Like oblivious to them.
I'm glad we brought up Jenny, because I like, not to just get right into like my whole summary of the thing, but like that to me is the heart of the movie, is Forrest, who adheres to the American ideals, adheres to the American dream, is completely average, actually below average, white man, just fails upward constantly. Jenny has every other experience where she does not adhere to the virtues of the American experience and goes into the seedy side of life and is on the left clearly, and then you have her having a horrible time and fucking dying
Yeah.
while Forrest just continually fails upward.
Just falls ass backwards into success.
Yes, it's like that's the propaganda of the movie at its core to me.
Yeah, he has more money than Davy Crockett.
The tagline could be like how a not so smart, pretty much able-bodied white guy, once he gets the braces off his legs, with generational wealth from probably slavery, can bootstrap himself to success.
That might be a little long though for the title.
Yeah, maybe it's more of a summary. It's a Netflix summary.
Yeah, fair. But yeah, so go ahead.
Are we to the Black Panther part yet, or are we going to get to that later?
I think so. We'll go through. I think we need to do the Vietnam, and then I guess it's right after that, like when he comes back home, right? Yeah. So I guess the only other things to kind of talk about. So now he's been dispatched to war, and I think this is where, like, I feel like a lot of the glorification of war is like when he gets there, they're like eating meat and like partying, like it's they just like landed on in Vietnam. And they're like it's party time. It's really messed up the way they. I mean, I'm sure that's how they felt too. America coming into foreign land to stop the evil commies.
Well, Uncle Ho surely ruined the party for them soon enough.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. Lieutenant Dan's character, I love Gary Sinise, but I love Lieutenant Dan's whole thing because he's like the glorification of war and as it presents itself through like an American lens, it personified. Like that's his whole thing. One male from his family in every generation has died in a great American war, and that's his goal. He wants to die on the battlefield. He's like a Klingon. Like he wants like Klingon. Like his sensibility is like it's all about honor, and he yells that at some point.
Yeah, and what's interesting about Lieutenant Dan's character is I feel like it's other than maybe that, which I don't think is probably legit. I mean, there are military families like where everyone goes, serves in the military, but I feel like his character is very also American dream-ish, like, right? He loses his legs. He kind of has nothing going on. He's living off the government. He's living in New York City. Doesn't have much, and then he kind of lucks into the fortune later with their shrimp company, with the shrimp later, which we'll talk about. So it's also very much like he failed upward.
Yeah. Really? Yeah. I'd say that's kind of accurate. It's definitely like a rosy picture they're painting of the Vietnam vet experience.
Yeah. They completely erase how the veterans were treated without actually touching on it.
Yeah, they and the other thing about their like whole like little military operations is where they're like throwing grenades into little holes and like going through there and digging out, and Lieutenant Dan, I don't remember the line, I didn't write it down. He says some like pretty, normal things what they would have said at the time in Vietnam, but they were very much like, these guys, I think they said they'll like cut off your feet or something like that. He refers to them as that they would like the Vietnamese would cut off your feet if they got the chance. I don't know if anyone remembers.
There's a lot of little Easter eggs like that leading up to Dan's eventual.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, so
the socks thing.
Yeah, the socks thing, but also when he's laying there and he's already got blasted to hell, and Forrest is coming to get him. He's on the radio, and he's talking to the people that to let him know like what happened, or I don't know what the fuck. He's like, we got shot or whatever, and the name that they call him or their unit is Leg Ligma. or Leg what? I'm like, that's fucked up. I don't know. There's a lot of little things like that like hint at it, and then
yeah, and this is where they have the little shrimp imperialism comment you were talking about before, where they're like, oh yeah, we're just gonna come back here after and just mine you for your resources on your pristine water.
Exactly, as if any of those poor grunts are going to see a dime of that exploitation either.
Well, the other thing, so this is another thing I noticed that we didn't mention is when they show Bubba's family, they show his So were they slaves, or I guess freed slaves eventually, right? Because they show them like basically as being servants, which is interesting because we saw, in Forrest's house, they would have had servants. So it's like an unlikely friendship. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I think so. Bubba's family, his mother cooked shrimp, and her mother cooked shrimp, and everybody cooked shrimp, and it goes back several generations, and you see her serving all these white families. So the implication there, the implication there is that in Alabama, their family was enslaved, and they have been there ever since, and they're living in poverty. If they'd gotten reparations, Bubba never would have been there. He'd be alive. His mom would be making shrimp for white ladies and their families.
Were
all
they
those
from
years.
Alabama too? Oh, they both
Yeah.
were. Yeah, you're right. You're right. They were both from Alabama.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the entire family has like one line between them in the entire movie, I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, and it's "Are you stupid?" or something, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and at the end when they give him when they get the check, she faints and she doesn't say anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I want to point out. Oh, sorry.
She does the caricatured, like Mammy faints when she gets, like old Hollywood style, like horrible caricatures.
The thing that gets me about Bubba is he basically like serves three purposes in the movie. One is to like die and create that first real loss that Forrest ever experiences, to like create that tragedy or whatever. And that's fine. I mean, that's a tool that gets used all the time. The second is to like serve as the catalyst for him to eventually steal the idea to like start a shrimping company, but like arguably steal the idea, I would say. And then the third is, oh, he's Forrest, but he's black. Like that's really his entire fucking character, is like they both talk the same and everything like that. And the reoccurring joke is, oh, are you guys brothers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He does
Yeah.
kind of steal the idea. He could have come back because he got the $25,000 to start the shrimping company. He could have gone there and partnered with the family, his actual family. But he's like, nah, I'm just going to start it myself.
And then be a white savior.
Yeah. Because you need to paint him in that light, so you forget that he's named after the KKK. I don't know, like Grand Wizard or something. I don't even know. They have like goofy like LARPing names.
Yeah, yeah. And I think there's like a bunch of times where they like allude to basically committing war crimes when they're in Vietnam too. They don't like outwardly say it, but they kind of like hint like, oh yeah, we're just going to do these things. And it's just like, yep, that's a war crime. Because they call for like the napalm to come in too. Like we all know about napalm. We know it's fucking evil.
Still fucking shit up.
So Forrest comes home. He saves the day. He gets his medal, the Medal of Honor. He meets LBJ. He shows him his ass, and then he goes to, which I think is actually, I always thought was a funny scene, is when he goes to the like gigantic rally on the mall. And I was just talking about, like, I would love to know what his little like spiel was that gets caught off because they like pull the the cords out of the speaker. I really wish, obviously there was no speech, but it would be really interesting to know what he would have said about the war that was negative, because he survives and he gets a medal.
I mean, his best friend died. Like, as much as they're painting in a rosy light, they don't. I mean, he definitely saw people get blown up in the napalm and all that stuff. And through his lens that he's filtering it through, he's just like, I saw bad things. I saw people die. My best friend's dead.
Yeah,
like,
true. That's true. Yeah. That's a good point.
Okay, so I have here what Tom Hanks says it is, but if anybody else would like to jump in with what they think he probably said, I think this would be fun. I don't want to leave.
I thought he just read the lyrics to "I Like to Move It, Move It," but they didn't want to pay for the license for that song.
He invented that too. That was,
Yeah.
that was his. and then the guy comes up to him tearfully. You said it all. You didn't do it all.
And he becomes famous for singing the song.
Forrest Gump. All right. Anybody else? Any guesses?
No.
It's very cool.
No.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. He says, sometimes when people go to Vietnam, they go home to their mamas without any legs. Sometimes they don't go home at all.
So he told Forrest's truth, which is truth. And of course, the military guy has to censor it, pulls the plug on the audio.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. Like they can't, God forbid, they know the horrors that are happening there, which I mean, I
Right.
think obviously they do. Like, I guess, how much were newspapers at the time showing all of the, obviously they weren't showing the horrors that happened to the Vietnamese.
I mean, I
That
think that was
wasn't
actually part of what made Vietnam so famous, is it was like the first like media documented like the bad shit that was happening.
it was
Yeah, there
after
was. Yeah.
it was after My Lai. After My Lai,
Mhm.
because newspapers wouldn't publish that. I forget the reporter's name who like actually took pictures and was like, "Nah, I'm taking all this shit back to the States." And he took it to a magazine at the time. That was a local magazine. I should have written this down, but it's all there. And then once those got published, and people were like, "Oh shit!" Like this is not like the rosy.
So yeah, so to your point, you're right. They were actually saying like, yeah, maybe the U.S. isn't the good guy.
Yeah, it's why you see a little bit later on, a couple scenes later, where the the abusive leftist boyfriend calls him baby. Who's the baby killer? The baby killer thing after I think it was after My Lie was a big term thrown around.
Yeah, that's true. I think that does sound right. Yeah.
And it's now reappropriated as a term of endearment in the infantry.
Jeez.
People call it to each other in a positive light.
Yeah, I guess, of course, yeah, all those things go around the other way. But I guess this does get us to the point now where he's walks around with Jenny, and then she takes him to the Black Panther Party's headquarters.
Which pisses me off the most of any part in this movie.
Yes.
Like, skip the breakfast programs, skip the medicine program, and have the Black Panthers building bombs in a back room.
Yeah.
And just yelling.
Yeah, just
Yelling in his face.
like, yelling past him,
Right,
not even
just
like
screaming.
yelling at him, yelling past him just for anger's sake.
Right.
And I think they had a bunch of like leaflets and posters on the wall. I tried to freeze frame it. I'm sure there's pictures online. There's a bunch of ones that like really make them out to be what they're trying to be, what the makers of the movie were making them out to be, as these evil people who were angry black people that they had to demonize. They weren't doing it the right way, in air quotes.
Like the entire movie tokenizes pretty much every like person of color and woman in the fucking movie. Like if a woman's not like gaining things through sexuality, she's gaining things through manipulation. And then that whole thing, like, I mean, that's not even a fucking character. It's just some guy yelling in his face, and then a guy who does nothing when a guy like smacks a woman in the room. You know,
And even
Forrest.
with that, it shows like if a white guy is supporting like a black liberation movement, they have to be a violent, abusive psychopath.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they end it too, like with his little like, sorry, I had a fight in the middle of your Black Panther party.
Because it's cute. It's cute.
So that was a funny line. It's wildly inappropriate. It's really...
Yeah, I mean, like, but that's like the thing that like he could say the inappropriate thing because like he doesn't know better, but the other people, like the way they portray the Black Panthers is inappropriate, but like they don't know better because I don't know they do know. I don't know where I was going with that. I was trying to find the pictures that they had on the wall like behind them in that room.
And he's also kicked out for beating the shit out of the guy that hits the woman, but not the guy that hits the woman. As a nice little taste of morality there.
I had a history teacher in high school. His name was Mr. Burns, and he's like a super like counterculture, like really cool dude.
And
He knew but he knew the person that character, the shitty boyfriend, was supposed to be based on. Like, it was supposed to be kind of loosely based on him, and he wasn't really an asshole. He was just somebody that the person writing that role did not particularly like.
There's not a single leftist in the movie that's honestly portrayed. Like the nicest portrayal that they give is the dude at the rally, and even then, all they illustrate is that he says "fuck" every other word,
and he's wearing an American flag T-shirt.
Yeah,
I appreciate both of those things. But yeah,
you're right though. They make them look like, just like assholes.
That guy was another thing I hated about the portrayal of the leftists in this. The guy with the American flag shirt was supposed to be Abby Hoffman.
Okay,
Um,
right.
and other than that, they portrayed, including with the Black Panthers, they portrayed all of the Jenny's, weird hippie hangouts. Everything they portrayed, and there's some truth to this with the new left in America at that time, is they portrayed them as very much rad libs and not leftists of any description.
Yeah.
They were all annoying as fuck.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't the boyfriend, Jenny's boyfriend. He was in the SDS, right? Like the Students
Yeah.
for Democratic
Yeah,
Society, right?
Yeah, they were supposed to be coming from Berkeley, I think.
Which was a new left organization that, if I remember correctly, was anti-materialist or whatever. I don't that whole phase of American left from that era is kind of goofy to me outside the Black Panthers.
The thing that sort of I think the thing that happens after he's in, so it's like Jenny departs and he's like Forrest is giving the boyfriend like side eye, like, don't beat her up anymore. Sort of
Alabama. Yeah, he looks.
Yeah, he screams.
I think he is now recruited. Now they're finally propagandizing Forrest to be the like elite ping pong player, right? Is this like he became good when he was in the hospital, and they're like, okay, you're really good. Like now we're gonna use you as like a tool to like have relations with China.
Another savant thing, by the way. He's just like magic. I almost said pinball. Ping pong wizard.
Yeah, right. So they send him off to China, and like I feel like they allude to the fact that he's like the first American to be in China or something since the revolution, or something to that effect. I don't remember the exact.
He said, "I was the first American to go to China in like 1,000 years."
Right. Okay. So
like it's Forrest's ahistorical thing, but it was clearly like he bridged the gap between the West and China.
Yeah.
And not the realities of the Sino-Soviet split, which had caused that, but
Yeah, and then one of my well, I won't say favorite, one of my annoying scenes that I find that I never really noticed. Again, this is another like placement of a famous person. He's on the talk show, and John Lennon is with him, and they're asking him about his playing ping pong in China. Like, what was China like? And he basically says,
Lennon.
"What's that?"
The bad Lennon.
Yeah, right. The bad Lennon. Yeah. He says, yeah, Lennon with an O. He says, I think I wrote the line down. He says, in the land of China, they had hardly anything at all. And then they're like, oh, they had no possessions? And then he says, yeah, and they never went to church. And they're like, oh, yeah, so like they don't believe in God and they don't have anything. That's what it's like in China. And then like John Lennon like says, oh, could you imagine it? And then, of course, like the little...
Yeah.
Him
we all remember COVID shutdown. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I found, again, it's like not a surprising little like dig, but probably what you would expect though, like on TV at that time. It's like basically, you could say it's like pretty spot on.
Yeah, I found it interesting, and I made a note about the 25,000 he winds up with out of the corporate sponsorship through with his little Mao paddles, which were cute. But I just find it an interesting parallel to where his wealth was created from around the time where, because of the consequences of the Sino-Soviet split, we had the Chinese people becoming the proletariat of the world as we were beginning to extract wealth out of China. And just like Forrest did, that's how he got wealthy. It was an interesting parallel I drew there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't. I mean, yeah, that's a good point.
Now the Americans are all very mad that China is turning it around on us and building socialism after the hardship they went through the last 40 years.
Yeah, he says when they send him, he's like, well, they figured the best way I could fight the communists was to play ping pong.
And they don't show. It was funny. I assumed when I was watching that scene, I hadn't remembered it when he's playing ping pong. I'd assumed that he would win. like would be like this big American triumph, but they don't really have that
No,
scene that way, which kind of surprised me. Like looking
no,
back, I'm like, why not have him win?
they're just playing, and then there's the big old poster of Mao in the background.
Yeah, and then he has the Mao paddle too, which is pretty funny. He's like, oh, I don't like I like this paddle. He's like, no, how about for 25 grand you can have this paddle?
I mean, his mom was not wrong in that sense because $25,000, you can say that you like this paddle, like,
Yeah, I
but
mean, athletes wear shoes. Like they don't care about the shoe, like they'll take whatever millions they give them and wear the shoe, whatever.
yeah, he's very easily led. That's kind of his whole thing, though. It's like that's how he falls ass backwards into it. Like people are like, well, if you do this, like you could get something out of it, or like, hey, have you thought about your future? No? Okay, well, here's what it should be. And it's just him accidentally doing things, basically.
What's so interesting too is like he becomes exceedingly wealthy, but he doesn't seem to care,
Yes.
right?
That was the next thing I wanted to bring up about this after getting that 25 grand, and he invests in the shrimp boat, right? I mean, we'll get to it, but that's his whole thing. The whole process of him becoming wealthy just has this banal um, milk toast face to it. Like it shows none of the exploitation. Like who was working that shrimp boat? Was it just him? Was it just him and Lieutenant Dan? Of course not.
Yeah, they had a whole fleet of Jennies, right?
Yeah, a whole fleet of Jennies. It was, of course not. He was expropriating labor.
And the shrimping doesn't actually end up working until a horrible hurricane that destroys every other fucking boat except
Yes.
the wolves.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
the only reason they're able to catch any shrimp, and that's the root of all of their success.
Exactly.
God bless America.
Yeah.
I never noticed like how well he does due to the misfortune of others in that movie. It's almost everything that like he succeeds at.
Also true.
Yeah, he gets his medal, essentially because he's fast and everyone else was, slow, and he saves them and he gets his medal and all of the like he doesn't get the ping pong without the medal, right? Because that gives him the name recognition and all these things, right?
But he only knows about ping pong because another nameless black man in the movie who is like far more injured than him is like, hey Gump, come over here.
You'll
You
like
ever play
that.
this? Any idiot can do this. And he shows him how to do it, and then he's like instantly amazing at it. Same thing with, I mean, obviously Bubba telling him everything about how to catch shrimp and what you can do with shrimp. Everything is on the backs of
Yeah.
well, everyone else.
Yeah, they have this whole like montage of them like catching like nothing on the sea. They don't know what the hell they're doing, and well, I guess there's actually a part that happens between those two things. I don't know if it's worth talking about. It's when he visits Lieutenant Dan in New York, and they're like it's New Year's, and there's like the going back and forth with Jenny, and I don't know, just showing. They actually show like Lieutenant Dan like in a good light in a way. Like obviously he's depressed. He doesn't have legs. He's mad at the government, mad at everything. But he like defends Forrest with those in his party with one of the women called him stupid. And he's like, no, he's not stupid. And he tells him to leave. So I feel like you do of like all the characters, I feel like Lieutenant Dan's like almost one you kind of like.
Yeah, the camaraderie between Lieutenant Dan and Forrest after that moment was really sweet, and it really was legitimately. And I think they had a place where they almost were able to make a statement about Lieutenant Dan, how he was discarded, all this, the treatment of veterans. And he's not homeless, but he's living horribly. All this, and then they turn it around to this milk toast, weird idealistic. I found God moment. And then he winds up with his magic legs and his fetishized Asian wife, of course.
Yep.
Yeah,
There it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Tokenized POC number 87 in the fucking movie.
Yeah, basically
Yeah.
every scene in this movie where there's like a different section. But yeah, so I guess that's a good point in the and the thing they also show with Jenny, which we didn't mention before, is they use, because Forrest is like very straight edge. He doesn't drink. He's drinking like sodas on the New Year's but Jenny is experimenting with drugs and like showing kind of like the she almost shows like the pattern of like drug history, when they're doing LSD and then there's heroin and so on. She's kind of experimenting with all those drugs and showing, what actual rock bottom or near it is for probably most people.
She says, or he relates that she told him that she met all these amazing people, went all over the place, and she learned how to open her mind. And then it pans over to her in like a group of people and someone putting LSD in her mouth. And it's like a bearded dude. I feel like there's a lot of instances in this movie where you're supposed to like recognize key figures or something. Like it's supposed to be like somebody, like the Marty McFly, like your cousin Marvin Berry kind of thing. The guy who gives with the LSD, like I've always wondered, is that supposed to be like
Timothy Leary?
I don't know, or like a Manson type character? Like who's that supposed to be? Like just some like weird dude just giving her drugs.
But she does seem to like be with. I mean, I guess earlier her boyfriend that was there earlier seemed tuned into like the activist community, but then she just kind of going wherever she could. Right? She didn't have any money. She kind of just living on the road.
Yeah, she just hitchhiking around. I feel like at one does she? I don't know. I felt like there was a part where I was like, is that supposed to be like the like electric Kool-Aid acid test kind of thing, or like what is going on? It's hard to tell. Like, I feel like
at one point she's clearly shooting up with a Hell's Angel.
Oh, interesting. I didn't catch that. I saw that she was doing that, but that makes sense.
There's the whole like borderline suicidal scene and everything like that. That's one thing I guess like the movie did okay was it's like there's never any instance where she gets help and she just kind of spirals, and I guess that's an okay depiction of it, but it also feels like at the same time the whole movie punishes her for promiscuity and her response to certain things aren't aligned with like typical human interactions despite abuse, but it's fun because he talks silly.
Yeah, in fact, so after the shitty leftist guy slaps her at the party and the Black Panther party, and Forrest punches him. Later on, she's like dating another guy, and he hits her or something, and then she leaves him.
Yeah, she has like you could tell she's like a black eye, and she's looking at it, and then she leaves. She bounces out of the house or something. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. So it's like, oh, Forrest taught her that's bad. So now, thank God he was there to hit that dude who hit her. Otherwise, she never would have made the connection that abuse is bad.
So, we were talking about them succeeding on the boat, purely by them, like the scene where like Lieutenant Dan is like on the top of the ship, the American flag is waving behind them, and that scene is ridiculous. And then, like you said, they have the TV report. Everyone is devastated. Hurricane something. And now they just like lucked into the only reason they're succeeding is because like there's shrimp out there and they can get them, which also still like they still weren't able to find them. So I'm still kind of confused how they did it. They just,
like statistically they should have got some shrimp.
Yeah.
Like,
well, so God is clearly capitalist, right? So they prayed to God for shrimp because that's the whole thing. He's like, why don't you pray to your God for shrimp? And then like, so Gump prays, and then he's like, oh, I got you, fam. And he sends a fucking hurricane to take out all the other boats. And he's like, you guys I'm the invisible hand. And here I am like taking out all your shit because this guy prayed and none of you prayed hard enough.
Yeah. He like Noah flooded them. He's like, you guys can survive on your little boat. And the rest of you are all dead.
I mean, that really is though, like the framework of capitalism. Like many have to suffer so the ones can succeed.
Yeah.
Like accidental communist force.
Yeah. And then I think the last section of the movie and then starts like running across the country, giving people like their inspiration to like create t-shirts and other nonsense. And I don't know. I found that whole thing. I don't know like what you guys make of the whole running thing. It felt very like hippie cultish. I don't know.
The one thing I noticed about it that I found hilarious is that they're sort of portraying him as stumbling upon these through hilarious mishaps, coming up with these slogans that, as if those things weren't created in a Madison Avenue lab, as every other, giant slogan or marketing tool is. Like, no, it was just this random dude running across the country. I just found that hilarious. The rest of that part is my least favorite part of the movie. I don't get into it, and I
The,
don't really take much from it.
the running part, yeah, the whole
Yeah,
kind of people are like, and it's like he's doing it for a long time and no one gives a shit. And then
Yeah, like a
first,
homeless dude running through the counties and no cops accost him at any point.
because he's white, right?
that's
if
a
that
great
was if that
point.
was Bubba, he'd be in prison.
Yeah,
Or worse.
I just looked up I was curious like how the shit happens thing came from, but there's like it was printed in like the 80s. Someone just said it, but no one really knows.
That felt like just an opportunity to stuff as many pop culture references from that time in
Yeah.
the scene.
Yes.
I've never read the book, but I'm sure like
Invested in a fruit company.
him jogging across the country was like a bigger part of that fucking book, and like that, because that scene didn't really like jive well with the rest of the movie. All it did was like serve to like show that he doesn't process fucking pain normally. I mean, I guess like because he's
Right.
doing it because his mom died, but
It's also
Yeah.
kind of like the end of history kind of idea, where like all this stuff happened and then the 80s hit, and now it's like this is how the world is and everything's running smoothly.
yeah, true.
Yeah, he doesn't have to fight. There's no war to fight. There's no, poverty is gone somehow. And they're like asking him, like, "Oh, you're running for I don't remember the things they ask him he's running for, like world peace or something." And he's like, "No, I just felt like running.
Yeah.
There's nothing left to do. There's nothing to fight for."
Yeah.
I just found this interesting tidbit for the slogans and stuff. For the smiley face, it was actually created in the 60s at the behest of State Mutual Life Insurance Company in order to boost the morale of its staff.
So you're right. It was created in basically a lab.
You'd be hard pressed to think of more of a soul suck than working in the insurance industry. So they probably had great need of a smiley face and a slogan.
Oh, you mentioned too that he bought the Apple stock like at the beginning for some
Yeah.
bizarre reason. It's like, Lieutenant Dan just put me onto this Apple stock. Like, okay. And it's funny when he first mentions like the fruit thing in my head, I'm thinking like, oh, is this? I knew what the clip was or knew what he does, but I'm thinking like Dole, because Dole is like this evil, awful company. He invested in Dole. He's like going to do some imperialism in like South America now.
Shrimp imperialism was not enough. He has to get into the dole game too.
Yeah, and
Can
they're like
The
killing
limit.
people.
Shrimp Republic.
Can we agree to call it shrimp imperialism? The portmanteau is right there.
Yeah, shrimp imperialism.
Yes,
Perfect.
imperialism.
But so the running thing happens, and it almost felt like that like little kind of meaningless bridge where they then had to have him why he was then going to see Jenny again and meet his son and so forth, and then there's sort of like the very they don't say what Jenny has, but I assumed it was HIV, which is what
Yeah,
it said.
heavily
80.
implied.
Yeah.
That's what people say, but given that it was not transmitted to, well, first of all, Forrest Jr. or Forrest, people think it's more likely it was hepatitis C. Because they didn't actually know about that till a few years later. Yeah, and I think that's what I always thought too. But I don't know. I went off on a tangent. I looked it up and everything, and I think maybe hepatitis C, because it wasn't until a few years after she died in the movie that was actually known.
Okay, interesting.
Either way, it was another clear form of punishment by the gods of that movie for her leftism and promiscuity. Of course.
Yeah, she suffers, whereas Forrest survives the whole thing.
Prospers, and he gets a kid out of the deal.
Yeah, he gets the kid. He, I guess there's not much else to sort of happen. She's sick. He takes care of her, and she passes away. And then he puts his son on the bus, and it's like the whole little circle thing.
Yeah.
Start to finish.
The feather
feather
out of the Curious
blowing.
George book.
But yeah, so they wrap it up very like neat. The White Forest survives. He's exceedingly wealthy. He doesn't show his wealth either. Like there's nothing fancy, in his whole thing. He just lives in his little plantation house. And...
That kid's gonna grow up to be a little shit.
Yeah. Oh,
like a shrimp empire, apple stock, war hero dad. Like,
yeah. He's not sad. He's not sad when his mother dies, but that's because he can see ghosts, so he sees her all the time anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, and then in a few years he gets to meet Bruce Willis when they moved to
Forrest Jr. was part of the Bush administration, no doubt. He was absolutely a young Republican in like 2007, 2006. He was
Dick Cheney's chief of staff.
Yes, he was definitely hanging around the neocon crowd.
No, you know what? I'm gonna give you a big old no on that one, because that kid is so sweet, and it's not just because it's Haley Joe Osment, but because Jenny was his mom, and Forrest is too nice to raise a shitty kid. He's just, for all of his falling ass backwards into stuff, that's like the one thing that I'm like, okay, I could picture him being a good dad, because it doesn't take that much, like it's really not as hard as people make it out to be a decent parent and raise a decent kid. Like, I don't know.
Plus, presumably he wouldn't really even have to work. His dad's a multi-millionaire kind of thing. He could just be involved in that. Do like open up like a fake charity, something like that.
He might be pretty out of touch, but I don't think he'd be like a totally shitty person. Maybe he'd go to college and get radicalized. I hope that.
Yeah,
I'm thinking that movie.
Yeah,
I'm thinking in that he was a good kid until he got into that prep school, and he started hanging out with the wrong crowd. Those young Republicans got him, because his alternate path would be a Kerry Democrat. That's his alternate path.
No, because Jenny was pretty radical. She had to slow it down. I think getting pregnant was like, and that was the other thing that was really tropey and annoying, is that she got pregnant when she came to visit Forrest, which was also at the end of history as we know it in the 80s, right before, Forrest's mom died. That's when she stopped all of her stuff. She goes there, she detoxes, she sleeps for like days, they have sex, and then she leaves. She turns her entire life around because she gets pregnant, but I don't think she lets go of the ideals necessarily that, that she came to as a result of her own hardship, and then also just, not living the weird charmed life that Forrest did. So I would think that she imparted at least a few of those to her kid. And I hope and would very much enjoy a movie about young Forrest growing up to be like, he doesn't have to be brilliant. He just has to be not a total shit. I also really want a movie of just like Jenny's whole thing, because we only get to see snippets of it, and she like fucking lives a wild life. Like she's all over the place. Like she's dropping acid in the woods, and she's going to protests, Black Panther parties, and doing coke in like high rises and stuff. That's
from that movie's perspective, Forrest just shows up and then punches two dudes, and throughout the time it just disappeared. Like she's like,
yes. This weird guy just keeps showing up and like punching people.
Yeah, there's also the scene in the club where she's playing guitar, the Bob Dylan song. And he like rescues her from the stage there too.
Yeah.
He rescues. He just carries her off like a caveman.
So I mentioned that year 94 was like an epic year for films. So what movie should have won? I'll poll the audience. So it was Pulp Fiction, Shawshank Redemption, Quiz Show.
Mine is Shawshank, clearly, but Quiz Show is a hugely underrated movie.
I don't know Quiz Show.
It's great. It's great.
I'd go Shawshank too.
Oh, it would have been Shawshank if Forrest Gump wasn't there. Like it clearly couldn't be Pulp Fiction, although like that's a great film. Like you can't have that level of violence getting the highest prestige in American cinema at that time. What was it, like the mid 90s?
Yeah, 94.
Yeah.
No, not too much sodomy at the Oscars.
Well, the fifth movie was Four Weddings and a Funeral, which wasn't going to win.
No.
Yeah, I would definitely. So if you haven't seen Quiz Show, it's a great movie. It's very Robert Redford. I don't remember who else is in it now. It's a Martin Scorsese. Oh, is Martin Scorsese?
No, it wasn't Scorsese.
He was.
Voldemort is the star.
Oh yeah, Ralph Fiennes, right?
Ralph Fiennes, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Is that how you say that? I've been saying Phineas my whole life.
Is it Phineas? Phineas?
I've always said Fiennes, so I
Phineas.
don't know.
He's from. Oh, so Robert Redford directed it actually. Okay, interesting.
That's right.
Yeah, but it didn't win any awards, which is kind of a. Not that I really give a shit about. I mean, I kind of mildly care, but it's disappointing when, Forrest Gump won this. But I mean, when everyone saw that, they knew it was going to win. Like, when you see the movie, you're like, this is going to win the Oscar kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's in the Library of Congress. Like, they put that movie in the Library of Congress. They're like, this is very culturally important and historically significant.
It's one of our best propaganda pieces. Of course we're putting it.
Our best export.
Nobody felt bad about Vietnam after watching it. Perfect.
Yeah.
We solved racism with this movie. So if you take out the pop culture references and if you take out the special effects, which at the time were groundbreaking but don't hold up at all. Like, there's not a single fucking special effect that like you couldn't do yourself on your fucking cell phone better now.
Yeah, like TikTok
in that
has
movie.
better things than that.
Yeah, without those two things, like, that movie gets fucking washed by Shawshank. But it is as they say what it is. So if Forrest Gump arrives upon his wealth, or like through the pathway to wealth, just a decade later, A, what influence does he have on 9/11? And B,
I was waiting for it.
I'm gonna say Lieutenant Dan is a definite yes on the Epstein flight logs. But does Forrest accidentally end up on those flight logs?
He would have been involved with like the opium trade indirectly in Afghanistan.
He's delivering like a truck of Stinger missiles to fucking Mujahideens to fight Russians and shit. Absolutely. Oh, that was they could have done that. That was the 80s.
No, Forrest accidentally releases the flight logs.
That's another thing.
He works for TSA and let them on the plane.
That's another fucking thing that they did in this movie. The security guard that caught the dudes breaking in during Watergate was another black guy.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
There's another fucking thing that they stole.
I was just mentioning
cognizant of it, but
I was mentioning to Evan yesterday that I was just so happy that they spared us the shame of seeing Forrest bring down the Soviet Union because one of the SS Jennies got caught up in an international incident.
Oh my god! Yeah.
They at least spared us that fucking indignity.
Well, I'm surprised they didn't have him influencing hip hop somehow.
Right.
They knew like the audience was going to be majority white, so you got to give him Elvis. You got to give him fucking Lennon, but nah, we can't touch on that because it lands in the 90s, and that's the new counterculture.
He could have influenced like the New Kids on the Block, maybe.
Oh no, Donnie Wahlberg
gives Marky Mark some shoes.
He actually he ends up saving that poor Asian individual who Marky Mark.
Blind in one eye now.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I noticed I did make a note, I forgot to bring it up, that anytime there was a public figure being shot, Forrest always describes it as, well, someone shot that man for no reason at all, no particular reason at all. Like,
Except for Wallace. He doesn't say that about Wallace, I don't think, though.
He did. He did for no particular. Oh no, he said for some reason someone shot that man.
Yeah, it's like, oh no, I'm pretty sure they had a good reason for that one. He didn't say.
And then the others, the Kennedys and etc., they said for no particular reason at all. But for Wallace, they said for some reason. You're right.
Yeah, they didn't mention like somehow he didn't like there was no like MLK or the Black Panthers, like were they Was one of them meant to be like one of the leaders of the Black Panther Party? Was that like Fred Hampton in there?
I don't think so.
I think there was so much
I don't think
erasure.
Huey P. Newton was in there.
No.
Yeah, there was so much erasure they didn't even give them names.
Yeah, they're
Right.
just like BPP extra one.
Yeah. Right.
Panther
Right.
Party.
That would require them being, people to the fucking propagandists that made this film.
Yeah. Instead of just set dressing for
Yeah.
Forrest's adventure through American history.
Well, I mean, this is one of those things too.
There's enough positive light of military life in that movie that I could see them like, because the only time that they show like, I guess you could argue the reality of war is like that scene where they get ambushed or whatever, but really that's just a way for them to flex the groundbreaking special effects at the time and to kill off Bubba and then to take away Lieutenant Dan's legs.
I mean,
those are like the only bad things.
I mean, even a part of that, like the U.S. military allows bad things to be shown because then they can get sympathy for soldiers, and then also they can be like, look at these heroes.
Right. Like that's why he wins. He wins the medal, like the Medal of Honor, or whatever it was. So there's still like value in service.
Right? You're gonna see some bad shit, but you'll get medals.
Yeah,
and you'll also meet another president.
Yeah, you can have your just make sure you bring like extra socks, and you're good to go.
I wanted to talk about for a second the LBJ scene where he shows him his butt. I love that, and I love how there's all these little nods to LBJ just being a fucking weirdo. Because have you guys heard the tapes of his conversations with his tailor?
No.
Okay, when you have time, just you type in LBJ and the letter T, and the first thing that comes up is LBJ tailored phone call. He's describing to him the exact hanging and placement of his ball sack and where his butthole is in relation to where he wants his pants to lie. He's just, like, there's all these.
I want to see that movie.
So,
it's called the Tailor.
Oh my god! It's like so out of pocket. Like he was so weirdly open about his genitals and stuff, and just talking about other people's too.
Yeah. He was swinging with a hammer, and like I know like there's like one Secret Service agent was like, he used to show me his dick all the time, and he'd ask me if I'd ever seen anything so big in my life, like while he's pissing on the side of the White House. I was like, what the fuck is wrong with these people that run everything? It's fucking insanity.
It's wild. It's wild. That's another thing. Speaking of piss, this is another movie where Tom Hanks pees, or at least he tells you about it. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of those.
Yeah,
that's another record.
That's true.
Every movie.
He's always pissing.
Son of a bitch.
Always pissing.
They did it again. They can't keep getting away with it.
I looked this up recently, and I feel like it's something like 13 movies or something crazy like that. Except for like Toy Story is like the only one.
I mean, it's why he became an actor.
Yeah.
he just had to pee really bad.
It's the Louis C.K. thing, except his thing is piss.
And we're paying him for it. God damn it.
And then like the Green Mile, there was the writing like room moment where they're like, what if we make his whole character just about piss? And that's what they did. The whole
there is a YouTube video of him peeing, like a supercut of all the movies. Yeah. Like Apollo 13.
The Money Pit, he's out there pissing in the fountain, yeah.
She's always pissing. Oh, ABP, always be pissing. There was a cracked article about that too, I think, back in the day.
Oh man. Does anyone have any final departing thoughts?
No, I don't think I had anything else. There's a couple quotes I really like that are really funny.
Yeah, it was good for one-liners. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, when he's like, when he first meets Bubba, he's like, "You ever seen a shrimp boat?" It's like, "No, but I've seen a real big boat."
All right. Well, I think we may have exhausted the Forrest Gump propaganda. But yeah, so again to ComradeLarry, KobasGhost, oh hey, and SmirkGently. Greatly appreciate you here to talk about Forrest Gump, and we will catch you all next week.